Eel Pie Island sits just around the corner of a stretch of Thames, which is the only view that is protected by its own Act of Parliament in the whole country. Since the, I think it was the late 1800s, early 1900s, you can't build anything alongside the river or anything that breaks the tree line within a certain vista as seen from Richmond Hill. So when you are approaching Eel Pie Island, you are enjoying the same view as people would have experienced in the past 2-3 centuries. Very first view is of the nature reserve at the end of the island. I mean, it's really quite magical in there because you're experiencing a landscape that literally has not changed in centuries and has not been touched by a human hand. In a location in sort of West London, it must be unheard of. The steamers brought people from quite far afield, as indeed people do to this day. And it would have been a full day out to come here to Eel Pie Island. You would get dropped off at the hotel. If you had a little bit of money in your pocket, you could take yourself to the hotel's terrace and be waited on by the hotel staff and have a sort of, you know, refreshments or whatever. After the Second World War, it was a period of great change. And the idea of Eel Pie Island no longer held that sort of exotic appeal, if you like, that it might have done in the decades and centuries before. So when the hotel changed hands in the early 1950s, the new hotel owner, Mr. Snapper, was sort of scratching his head as to how he was going to kind of turn a buck on it.
In 1956, there's a chap called Brian Rutland who was playing at a pub down on the river called the Barmy Arms, and he was playing trad jazz. He was drawing in an incredible crowd, and he certainly needed a bigger room than the place he was actually playing at.
It started as a trad jazz club, and then gradually over the years, as popular music changed, the music that appeared at the club changed too. And at the museum, we tell extensively the story of that musical journey of the 50s and 60s.
Became really good friends with Arthur Chisnall, who was the guy that ran the club. So I first interviewed him in 1996. He allowed me access to his archive. He then left his archive to me when he passed away. He kept most things, so he had this big stack of contracts, which allowed Pete to start the work on the roll call.
When I put this list here together, which is it's a snapshot of what I knew 5 years ago as a result of getting hold of Arthur Chisnall's papers, and therefore the contracts and flyers associated with the club as it was, I quickly realised that a lot of the names, they were the performing bands of the time. They weren't necessarily the chart toppers. Yes, the Rolling Stones played a lot of times, but by the time they've had their final gig, they'd only ever had one single. They had really not hit the charts yet, but they were just about to, clearly, in a rather large fashion. But you have the likes of David Bowie playing here in ¡64 with a band called the Manish Boys. He was still called Davy Jones in those days.
One of my favourite things was this letter here from the Eric Easton group. They were the Rolling Stones management. There's this lovely letter detailing how much the Rolling Stones got paid. £45 for a gig.
Arthur Chisnall promptly signed up the Rolling Stones for a 5-month residency. So from April '63 till September '63.
When I eventually got the Rolling Stones to sign this for me, so I did the montage. It took about 6 months. I had to go off on tour with them in America because they only do signing sessions when they're on tour, because that's the only time they're all together. So it kind of went off on tour. I think it was signed in like Nashville or somewhere, and then it had to come back.
Genres of music that came through, it's primarily jazz, and as I say, jazz was always on the Saturday. R&B was held sway. We had a lot of the old venerable old blues American guys that were coming through. So Howlin' Wolf, John Lee Hooker, Memphis Slim, Champion Jack Dupree, all of these guys played at the island. Then started to put bands on like Genesis, Van de Graaff Generator, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Free, and Taste, and people like that.
This venue was not a room above a pub or behind a pub or some such, or a tiny space. The hotel's venue was a ballroom. It was as large as the hotel itself.
Well, it was lovely and dark, and it had several levels. You went in and you went down several levels until you got to the huge dance floor. There was room, because it was jazz and we needed to dance, and we danced and the floor moved, and you knew exactly where the best places of the floor moving to skip, jive and stomp, and we all jived, and we used the floor. It was wonderful.
At the end of '67, unfortunately, however successful the club had been, no money had been put back into the hotel. So the actual, or the ballroom more specifically. So it was in a state of rack and ruin. So he walked away from the whole operation. So suddenly the music has stopped.
But I mean, to us, the end of the island was '67, to what our little lot that went to the island.
Sometime in March '71, they were burning some rubbish, it got out of hand, and that was it. The ballroom and the hotel were gone forever, and they were both gutted. And what you do have on the site now are a set of 18 or so townhouses, which were effectively what Snapper was planning to do.
With people coming from all over the world that, either whether they went there or they didn't go there, they've read about it, and and the Rolling Stones, it does carry on,
At the other end of the island, there's also a bird sanctuary, which is even more inaccessible. And there are many islanders who will never have been in that bird sanctuary. So the island is, in terms of how you approach it on the river, how it's kind of topped and tailed, whether you're coming from upstream or downstream, it looks as it has for centuries.